Almost nobody prayed to Odin. For most of the Viking Age, he was not the god you called on. He was the god you hoped had not noticed you. Odin is the one we remember, the one-eyed wanderer. Poetry, prophecy, kings, and he is spectacular, which is exactly why his stories are the ones that survived. But if you opened 1,000 Viking graves and counted what people actually wore against their skin, you would not find Odin. You would find a hammer. They have been cataloged by the 100, and that is only the pendants. Add the miniature hammers riveted onto iron rings and the count climbs again. In graves, in silver hoards, in harbor mud, from Norway to Iceland to the river towns of Russia. Odin belonged to kings, to poets, and to men who wanted something badly enough to pay a terrible price for it. Thor belonged to everyone else, and the Norse were remarkably honest about what he was. Enormously strong, enormously hungry, instantly angry, and not clever. He gets tricked. He gets out-argued. He loses. He was also the only thing standing between the world and the things that wanted to eat it. Tonight, the god the Vikings actually worshipped, and how we know. Start with the face, because the modern one is wrong. Thor is not blonde. In the sources, he is red. Red beard, red hair, and eyes the sagas describe as difficult to meet. He is the son of Odin and of Jörth, whose name simply means earth. The Sky Father and the ground itself, his entire inheritance in one sentence. He does not ride either. Odin has the 8-legged horse. Thor has a cart pulled by 2 goats. That is not a heroic image. The Norse did not care. That cart is where thunder comes from. When the wheels go over the sky, you hear it in your chest. He eats like a natural disaster. In one story, he gets through an entire ox and most of the drink in the house. And nobody in the source treats this as a character flaw. His temper arrives instantly. The sagas have a stock phrase for it. The beard bristles, the knuckles go white on the handle, and something in the room is about to stop existing. But he is not cruel. And he is not clever. He is out-argued by a dwarf, fooled by giants using nothing but illusions, and mocked from across a river by a ferryman he cannot reach. And the Norse told those stories with affection, not embarrassment. Odin wins by knowing something. Thor wins by holding on for longer than the other thing can. Because the point of Thor was never that he was better than you. It was that he turned up, every time, for anybody. So how do we know he was the popular one? Not from the myths. Myths were written down by poets. Poets were paid by kings, and kings liked Odin. We know it from the ground. We cannot count anyone's prayers. But we can count what they wore, what they named their children, what they carved, and what they buried with their dead. Small hammers. In silver, in bronze, in iron, in amber. Worn on a cord at the throat by farmers and fishermen, and by the wealthy too. This was not only a poor man's god. Now count the Odin amulets. There is no equivalent object. No mass-produced spear, no eye, nothing you could buy at a market and put on your child. The most popular god in the archaeology is not the most popular god in the poetry. Norway, Sweden, and Iceland are covered in places named for him. Torshov, Torsnes, Thorsberg, farms, headlands, harbors, assembly grounds. Odin place names exist. But they are rare, and they cluster around power centers, royal seats, the ground where the elite actually lived. Thorstein, Thorbjorn, Thorgrim, Thordis, Thorfinn, Thorvald, Thora, Thorgerd. In Iceland's Book of Settlements, the element Thor runs through the population like a watermark. Roughly a quarter of the settlers carry his name inside their own. And Odin? Odin names exist, but next to that, they are vanishingly rare. You did not casually put that god inside your child. Around the year 1070, a German churchman named Adam of Bremen described the great temple at Uppsala, where 3 gods stood together. Odin was there, Freyr was there, and Thor, he wrote, sat in the middle, the mightiest of the 3. Thor governs the air, he wrote, thunder and lightning, winds and rain, fair weather, and the crops. That is not a war god's job description. That is the job description of the thing your survival actually depends on. If the weather turns against you, you die that winter. Odin could give you a poem. Thor could give you a harvest, which brings us to the hammer, and the thing almost everyone gets wrong about it. Mjolnir is not a sword. It is not a weapon of conquest, and Thor never once uses it to take something that isn't his. It was made underground by dwarves as part of a bet, and it came out flawed. The handle is too short. Someone interfered with the forging. We covered who did that and why in the Loki episode. What matters here is that the most famous object in Norse mythology is a slightly defective tool. It always comes back to his hand. It never misses, and it is small enough to hide inside a shirt. It kills giants, certainly, but killing was never the only thing it was for. The hammer also hallows. The hammer is what you raise over a marriage to make it real. The sources put it over a marriage and over the dead. And carved into stone, the same idea keeps appearing, in the same words. There are standing stones in Scandinavia that end with a single line, "May Thor hallow these runes." This is a god who was invited into the moments that actually mattered. Birth, marriage, death, harvest, the voyage out, and look at what he fights for. He is not raiding. He goes east into the giant country, and he kills the things that would otherwise come west. Thor is a wall. That is the entire theology. Somebody has to stand between the farm and everything outside it, and it was never going to be Odin. One of the most widely carved scenes in the whole Norse world is not a battle. It is a fishing trip. They cut it into stone from Sweden to northern England. Thor goes to the hall of a giant called Hymir and asks to be taken out to sea. Hymir sneers at him. "Fine, but bring your own bait." So Thor walks into the giant's herd, picks out the largest ox in it, and tears its head off. They row out. Hymir stops at his usual fishing ground. Thor keeps rowing, past the shelf, past the point where the giant tells him to stop, out over the deep water, where Hymir has never been and does not want to be. Thor baits the hook with the ox head and drops it, and something down there takes it. What is on the line is the serpent that circles the world, the thing that lies in the ocean with its own tail in its mouth, holding the sea closed. Thor hauls. His feet go through the bottom of the boat and he braces on the seafloor itself, and he pulls until the serpent's head breaks the surface. And then the two of them look at each other. And to anyone who knew the prophecy, that image carried a second meaning. At Ragnarok, the serpent kills Thor, and Thor kills the serpent. So a Viking looking at this carving on a stone was looking at two creatures, each face to face with the thing that will one day kill him. Thor reaches for the hammer, and Hymir panics. Perhaps because he finally understands what Thor is pulling toward the surface. Takes his knife and cuts the line. The serpent sinks back. Thor throws the giant overboard and wades to shore, furious. And the world gets to keep going a little longer. That is the scene they chose to carve, not a victory, an interruption. And when Christianity came north, Thor was the one who would not leave quietly. Odin was easy to convert away from. A king changed faith, and his household followed him. Odin was policy. But Thor was in the farms, in the names, in the weather, in the marriage rite. He was not policy. He was habit. So something strange shows up in the archaeology. As the crosses arrive, the hammers do not disappear, they increase. In Denmark, archaeologists found a 10th century soapstone mold for casting jewelry. On one face of it, the shape of a cross. On the other face, the shape of a hammer. One craftsman, one workshop, making both for whoever walked through the door. There is a man in Iceland's Book of Settlements called Helgi the Lean. Helgi was a Christian. The source says so plainly. He believed in Christ. And when he was at sea or in any serious trouble, he called on Thor. Nobody in the source treats that as hypocrisy. It is simply what you did. Christ for your soul, Thor for the weather. In the year 1000, Iceland voted to become Christian at its open-air assembly, and part of the settlement was that the old rites could continue in private. Thor did not lose. Thor went indoors. In Oslo, there is a district called Torshov, Thor's temple. People catch the tram there. Along the coast, the map is still full of him. Torsvik, Torsnes, Torset, ground that somebody a very long time ago decided was his. And people still wear the hammer, not always as belief, sometimes as ancestry, sometimes as plain stubbornness, which would probably have suited him. But the last trace of him is the one nobody notices. English kept Thursday. Norway and Sweden kept Torsdag. Germany kept Donnerstag. Odin survived in the poems. Thor survived in the names, in the silver, in the weather, and in the week itself. 1,000 years after the temples came down, he still turns up. So here is the correction. Odin is the god of the stories. Thor was the god of the people who told them. One was for kings and poets and men who wanted something. The other was for the woman in labor, the man putting a boat into the water, and the family standing in a field in August, watching the sky and hoping. Next Sunday, the goddess who takes half the war dead before Odin ever sees them. Freya. Love, war, gold, witchcraft, and a great deal that later got quietly edited out. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And the Sleep Sagas playlist is on your screen if you would rather have the old myths carry you into sleep tonight. Until then, I'll see you by the next fire.